Wow.
Thank you so much for tuning in, ladies and gentlemen, everyone. This is Derek Bartolocelli, as with me is Leslie Powers. We have another powerful segment with Rodney Goodwin today, and it comes up on our 13th episode. We have the actual 12 segments of the Zodiac, houses, if you will, and bringing it back full circle to the Equinox, here to share some insights and things to be foreseen, considered, not worried about, because we're not the worriers, we're more spiritual warriors. And currently just in a place of a lot of gratitude of just how the show has been going and the superb guests that we've had on and their beautiful and wonderful insights and such profound knowledge that everyone's taken in, on their behalves, and how it correlates and coalesces into something that is just can be universally understood to a lot of degrees for a lot of people, pretty much everyone to a degree. But speaking of degrees, my life has been so complicated, Rodney. I got to tell you, I got that Saturn on the 29th degree, and I heard that's some pretty harsh shit. But
great position. Oh boy, yeah, that's yeah. You're here to definitely do some work, man.
Yeah. Welcome, Rodney. Yeah, got some. We want definitely hear your wisdom. We're so glad you're such a master astrologer and really have an understanding, really, of the cosmology, and so it expands, your readings to really unique way, in a really unique way. Want to highlight that you are now a guest on Logan Hart's live Wizard Factory show every Saturday morning, or depending on your time zone. You just got off of that, and so it's been a marathon day for you. Thank you so much for joining us here. We'll be posting this a week after, and excited to hear about what is going on in the astrological world right now. What's significant? What do you see as the dynamics that are that we're interacting with, right, energetically? And then how do we activate our own power, our own inner warrior to master this time?
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I put myself in a position where the astrology aspect comes fairly easily to me, just because of my makeup, my codex, and so it's something that I love to do. I love to help people, and working with my own templating, my own life, as well. And bringing things into a place where, I'm trying to find balance and harmony within my own self. And and so, teaching is a form of alchemy. You're moving energy when you're teaching, and you're expressing, you're putting things together, you're bringing like a consciousness constructor, and you help people kind of connect the dots. That's what astrology does. It kind of helps you connect the dots, in context of why, and a lot of people don't know the why. They don't know why things are happening to them. They don't understand why, these setups are going on in their lives. Well, the why is that your templating is, in context of vibrational correspondence, is playing out on the field. And so, you're here to resolve things. Squares and oppositions are about resolution and bringing resolution to your life and into your soul's journey. And so that's why astrology is so important. And we're going to get into the equinox energies here, because that's something that why I love, the tropical system, because it's predicated upon, the solstice, the changing of the seasons, so, you have the winter solstice, and that's dealing with what? Moving into the Capricorn energies, and the earth elements. And you're dealing with what we're dealing with now is what we're moving into, getting into the spring aspect. We'll be moving into the Aries elements, which is the fire element, where everything is firing back up from being, being asleep, so to speak, the trees and the hibernation aspect, if you live in a place where you're dealing with four seasons, so the equinox, the spring equinox, the equinox just means equal parts of light and darkness, so we're dealing with, the equality of light and darkness, between those points, and this is, if you want to take it to the aspect of the fall equinox, that's Libra, so dealing with the equal scale, equal parts of light and darkness. And so when we're dealing with the Aries energy, what's happening, we're firing up the cardinal fire elements, which is what happens in the spring. What do? You plant seeds. See? So this is the time when you plant seeds. That's what the spring equinox is all about. It's about planting new seeds in your life that are going to go through the process, of the alchemical process of transformation to become a plant. And so that's what the spring equinox is all about.
Yes. So there's also a correlation with the season of sacrifice, correct? How would you describe that correlation to astrology?
So the sacrifice to me is about shedding the old version of yourself. Mm-hmm. So that's, they talk about what spring cleaning, so to speak, well, what you're really doing is that you are shedding, like a snake skin. You're shedding your old identity, the old version of yourself. See, the winter months are all about what? Hibernation and reflection, so you're sleeping more, you're pulling back, the winter aspect is a water aspect as well, dealing with your emotional, your emotional body and being able to pull back, recalibrate and refill. So this is what the winter solstice is all about. It's the sun is in the furthest part of the southern hemisphere, and you're getting less sunlight, and so what's happening is that you're resting, you're sleeping, you're revitalizing yourself. So when the spring comes and the equinox comes and you have this sacrifice that you're making, the sacrifice is unto yourself, and that is, now I'm ready to step into planting a new version of myself in context to the seed element, and planting a new version of who I am and springing that forth, bringing and springing that forth into manifestation.
I love that view on it. It's the real positive aspect, or probably the original intent, I guess, of that pagan sort of seasonal cycle, right?
Right.
And then so it's being exploited on some level, right, by the dark occultists. And so maybe compare and contrast what may be happening, or what's happening or could happen during this season that could be exploited, what we could watch out for, and then how do we find our own power during it to balance that out.
Well, 322 is a number that is used by the dark occultists. Mm-hmm. So this is their season of sacrifice. See, and so this is why we see a lot of dark satanic stuff happening in the reality field as they're implementing their sacrifice in context to that 322. And looking at the chart, I just did a video on this a few days ago, about this particular subject, and seeing the setup that's going on with this particular transit that's happening with the Aries energy. Jupiter has moved into Aries, and is at it's at its midpoint transit here. So it's at like 16 degrees right now. And then you have Venus, which is just now transiting the Jupiter energies. And if you want to take it to the inversion aspect, Venus is in context, that is the dark feminine Illuminati. That is how they use it to create the distortions and the satanic stuff. So if you want to look at it from that point of view, and then it's all this is transiting the Chiron energy, which is the wound, and the betrayal aspect in context to your deepest wound. and and how they are able to then manipulate the masculine and feminine force against each other. And so when we're looking at all that happening in Aries, in its shadow aspect, can be very narcissistic, very tyrannical, very much consumed with itself. It is the first gate, so it is the gate of self. So this is how they work with the energies, to develop these sacrificing aspects in the ethers. This is where we see the shootings and the sacrifices of all different types of satanic things going on during this time. 322 is the skull and bones number as well. So you're dealing with a lot of dark occultisms during this time of spring time of the year. And what we were talking about before in context to our ancestral energy, this is the animist tradition. Understanding that we are creating new versions of ourselves and bringing ourselves into a position of becoming more empowered, and casting ourselves into a higher aspect of who we truly are, knowing who you are on the journey. And so there's quite a contrast between the evil that's going on with the sacrifice and the actual the way it's supposed to be wielded.
Right. So how do we how would you encourage or advise people to view this time of year in a way that's empowering? And how can we activate our inner power? What does that mean? You talked a bit about the inner mage. I think you said could you describe that?
Well, magic's everywhere, but what we have to realize is that you are the tool. This is the technology. Your body, your etheric body, your mind, your mind, your actual mind, and your brain is just the radar where everything your tree moves through. But your tree, which is your nervous system, is how we are perceiving consciousness, through the five senses realm. And then working with your etheric aspect, which is your intuition, your empathy, and all these type of aspects, your psychic abilities, that type of stuff. This is all integrated within your soul code genetics in context to that and your etheric body. So think of it in terms of how you want to, level yourself up as a magician, as a mage, because there's magic everywhere. I mean, everything is magic. I mean, my God. So when you start to realize that you are the ultimate tool, then that becomes the focus into your internal dialogue and internal reality. And when you're working through, the overlays and the distortions and how everything is, the programming of your life through the alchemical process, and you're going through these things, the equinox becomes important because you start to realize that, out of the darkness shines the light, and without darkness, there can be no light. So you have both that you're integrating, and a lot of people want to look at, compare darkness to the shadow, but that's not really what darkness is. Darkness is Ganundagap. If you want to take it to the mythos, and it's the womb of creation. See, what can you create on the canvas, and what type of tapestry do you want to put together, like somebody who makes a quilt or, something like that. They're putting their ideas into a tapestry, and so your inner working and your inner mage then becomes, the place where you are creating the magic within yourself. See, and then your choices to action and vibrational correspondence in your state of mind, in context to your actions and cause and effect, and then bring that out into reality, into your personal reality and how you surround yourself. It's so important what you put in your house. Living your life by intent is the biggest key. Purpose and intent become the magic that you're wielding to your life's reality field. And then from there, once you've empowered yourself on your own personal level and personal reality field, then you can step up and you can start to work into the collective reality field by doing what we're doing here, putting out segments and working with people and doing readings and that type of stuff. That doesn't come immediately. It takes time to get into that position. I've worked years to do this, but again, it's all about what? Keeping yourself moving, keeping going. Don't let your energy get stagnant. Don't get yourself into the victim savior aspect programming, but realize the indifference when that comes in and clear it out. And that's something that you got to keep constantly doing. It's not a one-time deal. So the path work then becomes very much creating awareness into your life. And so that's the process of becoming a magician itself.
Yeah, I really liked what you said, living life by your intention, by intent, right? And is so important, not being a victim of the energies that are just coming our way,
right,
of entropy and because there's so much of that, right? And that takes a lot of willpower to not just succumb and give in, right? So when we're looking at this equinox coming up and you're saying there's some big energies that are coming, I'm thinking that means there's going to be some events going on or pressures, maybe, not even that concretely seen, but energy coming that could make things hard for us. Perceptions of things are hard, right? So we're going to have to dig really deep and hold ourselves strong, right, against those forces and continue to act with intent towards our purpose. And so, share a little more about that. So
coming into Aries season, when you talk about your will force, that really is your sun or your ego. Mm-hmm. So it's how you build your kingdom. And the sun is in Pisces right now. So what's happening right now is that the will force is more towards the 12th gate, which is what all about developing your will force and your ego into a place of balancing with your intuition. And so the 12th gate is all about your psychic abilities, your intuition, your shamanic abilities as well, and bringing those online with your will force, so and then allowing that then to come into manifestation. The Aries energy is all about leadership, and self. So it's coming in when the sun, really what's going to happen this year is we're going to have both the sun and the moon moving into the Aries gate at 0 degrees with the new moon at the same time. So the new moon is going to be at 0 degrees with sun. And what a new moon is basically in conjunction with the sun. So that's a new moon. So the sun is not casting any light upon the moon at all. What's happening is it's in conjunction with the moon. Sun and moon are in conjunction. So that's why we call it a new moon. And a new moon represents a new beginning. It represents something new that you're getting ready to seed into the reality field and to the aspect that it's coming during the equinox, is really, really, significant, because this gives us a chance as mages and on the light side and positive side to really bring some heavy intent, in context to, what we're wanting, our goals, what we're wanting to see in our personal lives, and then what we're wanting to wield out to the collective as well in context to that, and then bringing it together and setting that in motion and intent, in ritual during this period of time. I've got a gathering coming here. I've got a few people, mages, coming that weekend before, and we're going to have a small little gathering, 6-7 people, mages coming together, and we're going to be working, with each other. I've got some things that I'm going to help, teach on. I'm going to teach on runic, the runic, kind of like what would we call, for lack of a better word, how to use the runes as a Merkaba field, and how we're going to use that to create the work with the spindle energy of our energy force, how the runes work with that. And I've got other people coming to teach tarot. I've got another guy coming to teach martial arts for that weekend. And so we're going to work with each other, and then we're going to do some grid work as well for that weekend. And it's going to be, it's going to be a great time. But this is all about setting that intent, because what else is in Aries right now? Jupiter and Venus and Chiron. So, we're dealing with the expansion of Jupiter sitting there in the Aries gate as well. And then we're also dealing with what? Venus. See? So this is tapping our, our self-worth, our self-validation and relationships. And then we're also dealing with, I don't know what's going on with my...
Yeah, you're a little foggy looking.
Yeah.
I'm going to let my dog out before I choose my door.
Yeah, let me see if I can get this curtain closed here real quick. Maybe that might
Sure. Looks like the blur went away. Yeah, I bring up some good points of just really trying to stay centered, stay in alignment, and having those templates of setting down that proper foundation of how you want to see the world around you and experience that and interact with other people, I think,
Right. Exactly. So,
and I really, your story was really incredible, and I'm just really glad you're okay with the whole truck incident and all that.
Oh yeah, that was a strange deal, man. And this is the
family was really
type of warfare we're under. Sometimes we don't realize how much warfare we're actually under, but how do you manage it? And that was that video. I'm talking about how to manage the warfare. How are we actually going to deal with it? And this is this season that we're coming into, this Aries season. It is all about stepping into your leadership position. Being a leader, coming into that space where you are first of all leading your own life. See, that's a big deal, because if you can't lead your own life, how are you going to lead anybody else? So that's what the season's all about. And by doing that, you're shedding that lack of self-worth. You're shedding that lack of confidence, that lack of self-validation. You're shedding, those shadow aspects, and creating this new version of yourself through the process.
What tips do you have for people to shed? Like how do you advise people to shed old energies? You talked about some ritual, that you engage in, or maybe some mental tips. Like, what does that mean in concrete terms for people?
Yeah, great question.
Well, it's an ongoing process, and everybody's at different stages of this process. So if you look at the alchemical process, the first aspect of that is the calcination. So it's the burning, it's the athanor, right? Mm-hmm. So when you're stepping into a place where you are, willing to put yourself in the hot seat, you're not blame shifting, you're not pointing the fingers, you're not being a victim to whatever. You're taking accountability for yourself. That's the first step of creating a new version of you. See? And that's at all the levels. I mean, you're going to be repeating that alchemical process. So once you go through that calcination process and you put yourself, there's this picture, and it's a picture of the athanor, the furnace, and the guy's on a bed, and he's got a couple people like pushing him into the furnace, and then he's like giving them instructions on exactly where to put the bed, where to push it into to get the best result, and so that's the type of attitude that we have to have. Is that number one, we don't know it all. Number two, I haven't arrived. Number three, I got a lot of work to do. Number 4, I am the master of my own reality, and stepping up to that. These are all things that you do to help shed the skin of the snake. Because the snake becomes an archetype of wisdom, the serpent of wisdom, right? So this is why it's been used against us, in context to the archetype. All these archetypes have been reversed. And so when you're dealing with creating a new version of yourself, it's all about stepping into that process and then going through the dissolution, the washing away, the mixing of the ashes, and then ultimately what you're trying to do is with the prima materia is you're trying to turn that lead into gold, or you're trying to create a coagulation point where all that material that was infected and that was polluted is washed, is cleaned, and distillation, all these processes that you go through to where that when you hit the coagulation and everything comes back together, it's a brand new version of who you are. It's the phoenix rising. See,
like a remixing of yourself in the purest aspect.
And it puts it all back together into a brand new version of who you are. A coagulation period. Yes.
Yeah.
So in terms of our experience, I would say that this would involve an emotional process, right?
Thought and emotion are what we're here to master. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Totally. And the thought comes first as far as, the first cosmic law principle. And you made me think about the good old alchemical green thumb and how, to keep that mental landscape proper with the fertile soil and all that good stuff, we do have to constantly, weed. And going back to concrete, daily applicable ways to go about, reinventing yourself and going through that daily alchemical process is to really, just go through your thoughts in your mind. You're weeding out the thoughts that are incongruent with, who you truly are. And when you take it back to, that heart mind and that kind of stuff. And anything to add on to that, Rodney?
Yeah. I mean, these are all trauma-based responses when you're dealing with that, with your thoughts, and they're attached to memories, and they're attached to this, and they're attached to that, which brings up the emotional aspect inside. See? Mm-hmm. So, you go through the process of, maybe you were abused as a child or whatever, and so that drops down into your trauma response. And the next thing you're feeling sorry for yourself inside on an emotional level, and then what are you going to do about it? Well, you can stay there and be stagnant, and allow it to devour you. Right. Mm-hmm. I always take it back to that show called the Never Ending Story, where he's with his horse and he's in the swamp of sadness.
Yes.
Right. And the horse is he's trying to encourage the horse not to be sad, but he himself is sad. And, and what comes to pull him out of the swamp of sadness? The dragon.
Right.
See, it's the dragon. So it's your dragon. It's your wolf. See, that you have to get a hold of in context to that and ride that dragon up out of that sadness. See, out of that stagnation.
Yeah. Great imagery.
Yeah, the courage, the will force, that
right.
activated animus or anima of the ego, I guess, if you will.
Right.
Exactly. I also think about that furnace, though, is the fire, right? And stepping into the fire, feeling, transmuting, allowing to metabolize the emotional baggage, right? Those painful memories and experiences, the emotions, instead of running from or burying them in the mud, right? It's experiencing, allowing them to burn off. And then that would lighten you like smoke, right? Or, the ashes are light.
Stack, right? Because that's the smokestack, right, out of the furnace, which is all of the what? That's all the Pandora stuff coming up out of that. You're opening Pandora's box, but you're willfully doing it.
Yes.
So you're going to burn one way or the other. Either you're going to burn in the fires of stagnation, entropy, and chaos, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And go through the processes of the whole victim aspect, right? And going through, why is this happening to me bullshit? Oh, what did I do wrong? Why, life isn't fair, all that stuff, right? And you're burning. or willfully step into the
Yes.
Athenor,
Yes.
making a conscious choice to actually go through the alchemical process and the rites of passage,
Yes.
right? And bringing that into a space where you then are stepping into your empowerment, empowering yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to burn one way or the other. There's no getting around it.
Yeah, excellent point. Yeah.
Burn,
So
baby, burn. Yeah.
activating
New
our
meaning to that.
yeah. And so what does it take to activate, to be able to withstand the fire, would you say?
Well, I think for me personally, one of the things that has really helped me is working with archetypes. So the major archetype, or that I work with, is Tyr, or yt5s. I wear this rune, and so when you're going through the real deep, dark, transformational aspect of Scorpio, you're really going through a purging.
Mm-hmm.
And you're really the fires are really burning inside of you. Tyr is the aspect of courage. So, Tyr is the courage archetype, and not only self-sacrifice, but also the sacrifice to the collective. You have a mission, you have a purpose, and that purpose is not just your individual transformation, but it's sixth house in service to others as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so, knowing where my sixth house placings are in context of Virgo and service to others, that's part of, of what you're here to wield in your mission and what you're here to accomplish. And so you've got both things going on. And so if you can tap into that courage and that strength of an archetype like Tyr, who basically, worked with Fenrir, he raised Fenrir, and the reason why Fenrir became so fearful is because the gods feared Fenrir, because they couldn't control that fear, so they had to find a way to try to bind Fenrir. Well, Tyr stepped in and sacrificed that. See, he sacrificed his arm. He sacrificed himself to that aspect. And once we understand, there's certain archetypes that we can actually work with when we're going through that process. And this is archetype, archetype typical or archetype type consciousness that we can, bring on and bring into our lives that will help us to, withstand the fires and the calcination process.
It's almost like calling on our ancestors at the same time.
That's exactly what it is. Yeah, they're in the blood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
So you said that, you look to your sixth house, and work with that to help activate your power or your strength. So can you talk a little bit, for a person who wants to know, where, for example, in, I noticed a comment where somebody, with Logan's show, and they said, I don't have any gifts or strengths here, like powers. And I'm like, no, everybody has something to offer.
Yeah, I saw your comment on that.
Yes. Yeah. So where does a person go to look, let's say, in their astrological chart, if they don't know what their strengths are? How can they discover those within
your gift lies in Chiron. So, Chiron is the gift and the wound. It's the wounded healer. Chiron's, is the archetype who taught the gods. So Chiron was a super god. I mean, he was teaching the gods, and he basically, his first wound, Chiron's first wound, was the rejection by his parents because he was born a centaur, and so so he literally was rejected, right, at birth. So that created an abandonment issue, right? A rejection issue within him, a betrayal issue with him, see? And taking it back to that, betrayal is the core wound of humanity.
Yeah.
And so who came as a mentor to Chiron? Apollo, see? So Apollo taught Chiron. What does Apollo represent? The sun, the will force, see? The heart core intelligence, the ignition of your sun. That's a polymer, see? So it's the ignition of your sun that teaches you when you connect to the higher force. But to get to that space, you've got to take that first step in actually taking responsibility for your own life and your own actions and what you're and the position that you are at that present moment in your life's journey. And if you don't know your gifts and you don't know your talents, then you don't know who you are. And so by stepping into that place, these arts of gnosis help us to tap into and recognize who we truly are, getting into the tarot, getting into the runes, getting into human design, getting into astropsychology, getting into numerology, all these different aspects of gnosis. Mm-hmm. And so this is why you've got to be able to work with them. And they help you to mirror back as to who you are and your talents and your gifts and where things are residing, where your weaknesses are, where your strengths are, and looking at your chart. And this is why we need mentors. This is why we need people who know these arts that people can come to. And ultimately, the job of the mentor is to get the student into a place where they become a mentor, and they then are wielding their gifts and their talents to the collective.
Yeah, it's like this huge cascade, like a waterfall of energy that is vibrating out.
Right. See, most of the gurus and mentors, what they do is they make you rely on them for your spiritual life, and that's not what a true mentor is supposed to do. A true mentor is supposed to help the other person or the student become more so powerful than they are. Let them be their floor as they launch into a higher aspect, even go further than you do. I mean, that's your whole joy of being a mentor, is seeing your student, come into a place of flourishing, where they no longer need your services.
Yeah, I love that, and it really highlights the oneness, right? So the recognition of our oneness and of the power of synergy and the power that comes from joining forces, so to speak. And there's no need for competition or jealousy or feeling like if someone's success is taking something away from you, right? So when those sentiments rise, those are the shadow aspects, the trauma residue that then can be dissipated, through that alchemical process to bring forward that pure energy of love and care, which will integrate us together in a powerful force, right? It seems like that's what we're here to do.
Exactly. See. And so once you are able to recognize that, and then get a clear picture of where you're actually at. No illusions, no bullshit. Quit lying to yourself. Quit rationalizing everything, and come into a pure look of who you truly are, where you're truly at, and be okay with that. See. This is just where I am. Okay, now I don't have any excuses not to go forward from here. And that's the hardest place to get anybody. I mean, think about what an alcoholic does who doesn't believe they're an alcoholic, or whatever, drug addict, addiction, whatever. I don't have a problem, even though my life's fallen around. My wife left me, my kids won't talk to me, my financial world is a mess. But hey, I'm not an alcoholic. I haven't done anything wrong. I'm just fine.
Yeah.
Denial.
Yeah, and then you get stuck in the I guess lower level, the river, deep in the underworld. And it connects to a point you made on the Wizard Factory show, where you were talking about like our home life and our professional life, our inner world and our outer world, ultimately needing to be in alignment. Right. And that's one way we can look at ourselves to see where we are out of alignment, is where we're in contradiction within ourselves or between our parts of our life, like where we compartmentalize.
Right. Exactly.
And how would that relate to your field here of astrology and these esoteric arts?
Well, if your life isn't synchronized, how are you going to ever manifest anything? If you're double-minded,
you'll manifest contradiction, right? Inconsistency.
Yeah, you're going to manifest chaos. You're going to manifest, distortion. You're going to manifest problems. If your life isn't synchronized. So synchronizing your life is all about, bringing your, what's happening in your internal life, and then creating a space in your private life that is sacred, and then being able then to take that sacredness and that beauty and that place of your sanctuary and bringing it into your public life. See? Mm-hmm. And then you're synchronizing, it starts with your private life, because look, when you start this path work, ultimately you really don't know much. So, so you have to attain knowledge, and that's how, attaining knowledge is reading books and, studying and researching and having mentors and doing all this, right? And that takes time. And so, so you're working with your own private, personal path work, mm-hmm. which is always ongoing all the time. That's fourth house. That's Cancer. That's your initiatory aspect. That's the first house of initiation, context to the moon. Mm-hmm. And if you want to take it to that aspect, that's the
talking about the emotional mind?
No, it's the card in the tarot. Why can't I remember it?
The moon.
It's
What's
not
the picture?
It's not the magician card. It's the next one.
The high priestess.
High priestess. Sorry.
Okay.
I don't know why I couldn't remember that. So so you'll have to edit that. So, so it's the high priestess card, which is, the initiatory aspect to mm-hmm. entering the temple gates of initiation, and that is the moon.
Yeah.
And so, when you're realizing that the fool, which knows nothing, getting ready to walk off the cliff, has, he's smelling the daisy, right? He's under a spell cast, mm-hmm. right? So it's the fool that needs to understand himself by entering the temple of the high priestess. See? Mm-hmm. And it's your moon energy to navigation where things get jammed, because you're not understanding how your thought and emotion are working in context to your own disposition. And to ever become a magician and step into that magician aspect, you've got to enter the gates of the temple. That's why those cards need to be reversed. That's why actually the high priestess card should be next to the fool, and then the magician card should be next. See?
Oh, that makes sense. You have to enter the temple.
Right.
Yeah, and we mentioned this last segment, I believe, but it just needs to be mentioned over and over and over again, because so many people are operating on, and it's like we're stumbling out of the gate almost, or we're not entering it properly if we're, going in, through a different archetype that hasn't been fully introduced, or it's out of place, and obviously it's like that zero is missing as well, type of thing, So yeah.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. And that is the process that we go through, and there's so many arts of gnosis and so many things out there that we could tap into that really are going to be a reflection back to us of how we're actually, who we actually are and how we're actually wielding magic, because if you're not wielding your own magic to your own, being in control of your own energy system and will force, someone or something else is.
Yes. So that comes back to that locus of control and activating the internal locus of control, the locus, when you're in the circle of the magician, there's the fulcrum, right? Which is sort of the center point that you're using to guide yourself, right? In context to your environment, and you're in this boundary, this protected, so to speak, circle
Yeah,
where
I
you
have
have your activated energy, right?
It's called the cone of power.
Cone of power.
Which is the vortex, And so and this is, if you, getting into the runes, it's, if you really want to talk about it, it's Dagaz. You take Dagaz, right? So it looks like an hourglass, but if you flip it this way, it becomes an hourglass. If it's this way, you're dealing with, this position. And if you flip it, it becomes this position like an hourglass. So if you got both going on and you pull a circle, it's the circle or the cross of the shaman.
Oh, that's so cool.
Dagaz becomes the shaman or the light, right? And so what you're doing is that you're creating, it's the spindle or the energy force as
spindle
rotating with each other. See, and that's how you're controlling time, because Dagaz then becomes the hourglass of time as it's connected.
Wow, so cool.
Yeah, and then in between, when you connect the triangles, right? So you bring because a lot of what they use is the 6-pointed star, right? And they bring that down, and that and they try to make that's the Merkaba field, but it's really not, because Ingwaz, which is the portal, becomes the diamond heart, and that's how Dagaz is connected. It creates it creates Ingwaz, and that becomes the diamond heart. See?
Wow, yeah. The runes are fascinating. We'll have to do
a portal. It becomes the portal. That's how you
I don't have it, but I use that green gem on the top right. It's kind of embodying like Yggdrasil or the Cathara grid.
As the Kabbalah.
It's not Kabbalah.
No, it's not.
Kabbalah is not symmetrical, and then it has missing components or whatever. But anyways,
how you doing? Hang on one second.
Yeah. Sure.
Huh? Are you on a meeting right now? I am.
Oh shit! You got to go soon, huh?
Yes, I am almost done.
Okay. Come back in like 15 minutes.
Okay. Yeah, you guys want to get some coffee? Okay. I got about 15 minutes.
15 minutes. Okay, good to know. I had a question about Venus right now. Could you talk a little bit about the energy of Venus and how that interplays, and the energy? Like, I imagine there's both kind of a dark side and a light side of that Venus energy.
Yeah. So Venus is in Aries right now, and it's conjunct with Jupiter and Chiron at the moment. So what's happening is that Venus is, it's running the 2nd and 7th gates, with Taurus and Libra. So, the idea of working with Venus is working with your self-love. It is a feminine energy, but in context to that, but as men, one of the things that we have to understand is that we also have to learn how to love ourselves and how to self-validate. And so that is that 2nd gate of Taurus. And when you're dealing with the Libra energies, that's taking it to relationships. Okay. And when it's in Aries, okay, it's a it's not a very exalted position for Venus. So what happens is that all that fire element that's sitting there, right? It begins to have an impact on things, and it will bring up certain issues in your life in context to your tyrannical narcissistic behaviors to your own self. Okay. And then also that projection to relationships as well. So that's how that happens when we're working with the Venus. Now, the dark energies of Venus is dark Luciferian aspect and getting into the female Illuminati. Now, Michael Tsarian does a lot of work on the female Illuminati. I recommend people check that out. There really is a lot of information about that. And this is something that has been kind of under wraps. People don't realize what that actually is. But, if you want to really get down to it, the female Illuminati is pretty much running the show here.
And is that part of like the Ball Lilith?
Yeah, called the Ball Lilith, right? Yeah. It gets into all that, and dealing with your dark, the dark moon Lilith aspect as well. Your charts, there's so much there. But Venus and Aries is going to reveal a lot of the tyrannical, narcissistic aspects of your life. So just getting into that. And with Jupiter sitting there, it's magnifying the energy. And with Chiron sitting there, it's also tapping into the core wound. Deep shit.
Yeah.
And you brought up a really good point, and I'm gonna share something just like kind of real quick as far as like, the wounded masculine is, and especially in regards to relationships where, they're no longer with their significant partner, whatever, or times are rough or whatever, or a man just they're used to having that divine feminine loving solace with that partner, and if it's not there, whatever, or divorces happen, all that stuff, and a man really has to go and consolidate his inner feminine to find that solace within themselves, because it's there, it's always there. We tend to extend dependency on others because we're not females, and they have more of that archetype, obviously, and it's a loving relationship of just that the love shared between two people. But does that make sense?
I'm seeing the connections in the words like console and consolidate and counsel, right? So there's like this consolidation by facing the grief, right? The consoling and seeking counsel in the I don't know, it's like in the grieving, in the feeling. I don't know.
Look, loneliness is real. Okay? Loneliness is real, right? So how do you overcome loneliness? Well, if I'm always bashing myself inside, if I'm always putting myself down, if I'm always like, I just can't do anything right. I've got all these programs, all these things running in my head. I don't want to be with me. See? Right? I don't want to be with me if I'm like that, right? So I've got to find something to distract me. So I'm going to be codependent, and it doesn't matter. I'm going to find somebody that I can, draw my codependency to, because I don't want to be with me. See? And so that's that 12th gate of isolation, Pisces, becomes very important to master, because you have to be okay with you.
Yeah. So that is one of the solutions to prepare oneself for this coming tension around the Venus energy, right? Of that, the wounded Venus, the wounded relational dynamics, the wounded, damaged love for self, right? So learning to be whole within oneself and to find peace within oneself will then strengthen one to be in relationship, and all that Chiron energy or the wounded energy not spilling out, right?
Right, because your gift set's there in the back behind it.
Yeah.
It's like the gold, the shadow dragon is protecting, the gold, right? Doesn't want you to get to it. The desolation of smog, he's underneath the gold, right? So who came to claim their kingdom? The dwarfs, right? And in context to, Netzvalar. So, what are they doing? They're going to reclaim their kingdom from the shadow dragon, who has hoarded the gold of consciousness. See? And so if you're indifferent with yourself and you are always putting yourself down, you lack of self-love, self-worth, self-validation, you got all this crap going on inside of you, right? You're never going to overcome the shadow dragon. You're never going to face it. See? You won't have the courage. You won't have the strength. You won't have the confidence. Your lion won't be online, and you'll because you've never tapped into your 5th gate in context to Leo and the sun. And so you'll never face the shadow dragon to mount that dragon and wield that true energy to its true position. See, your ego will always be polarized. You'll never get any rest. The pendulum will always be swinging on you. And so the key is to understand that there's gold, there's a gift back behind all that woundedness.
Yeah, yeah. Wow, that's very poetic, beautiful image.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really goes back to having that courage to face your fears, face yourself, and face the fire, because you're going to be burnt regardless, right? So
exactly.
It reminds me of this beautiful imagery that I heard in a talk that Thunder Wizard did, Michael Denny, and he was talking about, I think if you want to look it up, you could look up the relationship between Hela and Kali. And he was talking about those two kind of goddess archetypes and how they're similar. But what he said about Hela was really beautiful. So if you look the image, it's a Norse goddess, and half of her face is like skeletal. It's like down to the bone, and the other half is, with flesh and beauty, right? But it's so you have to face Hela by going into your darkest places, up to the very edge of your own destruction, and he talked about her as standing there as your mirror, the mirror of your deepest wounds and your pain, and that she is both exposing that to you and reflecting it to you, but also like holding you lovingly there.
Right.
And so it's a beautiful image of like, for me, that shadow work process of like stepping inward to your inner mirror and looking at yourself exposed down to your bones, and know though that you are being held in the arms of a loving mother at the same time.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Looking at the Star Wars aspect and Anakin, how he turned into Darth Vader, what happened to him? He basically ended up coming into an actual confrontation with his own mentor.
Right.
At that point, because he still had all of these things that he hadn't worked through yet, and so he actually came into the position of being at heads with Obi-Wan, and so what happened, literally he stepped into a position where he basically was sacrificed, because he had went in, he had basically just taken out all the younglings. He became Darth Vader because he didn't actually face the mirror within himself, with all that power, all that force energy within him. He didn't know how to control his own thought and emotion. So that's what made him to become a Sith. The Darth Vader aspect.
Yes.
Driven by fear. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's an interesting energy, real quick, just to that archetype of a student wanting to take over the mentor.
Right. That's what I'm talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, man, that's crazy shit.
Yeah, so that's kind of what happens, if you're doing this path work, but you're still not dealing with your Aries energy.
How does this all relate to Odin and the sacrifice unto yourself? Is that somehow connected here?
Well, the Odin path is all about, bringing yourself into a position where, wisdom is, the wisdom is what you're wanting to, is why you're sacrificing yourself unto yourself, is to attain to the high level of wisdom, which is what Odin represents, the hanged man.
On the tree of life.
Yeah, so the hanged man is all about, sacrificing yourself unto yourself and realizing what type of reversals that you're actually on and what you're actually dealing with that. Because what are you dealing with? You're dealing then with the death card. So the death card is the 13. So you're dealing with the 13 in context to that, and if you take it to the astrological aspect, that's Ophiuchus.
Mm-hmm.
So Ophiuchus then becomes the 13th gate. See? Yeah.
Damn. Whoa.
I don't know. I have this image too of like transposing the Odin on the tree onto the astrological wheel, right?
Right.
And the gates, the different worlds that he travels to, or gets knowledge from is sort of related to all the gates, the astrological gates.
Well, I think the Hangman card is the 12th card, right?
Might be. I don't know.
Let me just look it up real quick. I'm pretty sure. I should know that. I should be
Yep, you're right.
100%. But is it a 12th card?
Yep.
So that's actually the 13. You want to really look
Fool is
Zero.
0. Yeah.
if you take Fool to the 0.
Exactly.
And today's the 13th of
Right.
What day? March.
No, it's the 13th episode,
Oh,
actually.
it's the 13th episode. That's right.
I got that wrong before that.
So look at it like that. I mean,
Yeah,
you're dealing with the Hanged Man. What are you dealing with? You're dealing with the 13 aspect. See?
Yeah.
So then if you take it to the actual 13 card, I think is the death card. So this is what we're dealing with, death and rebirth in context of that. And this is why Chiron relates directly to Ophiuchus, because Chiron is the archetype of medicine and healing. And Ophiuchus is representative of Clepas. Clepas holds the staff with the serpent running up it.
Wow.
That's the archetype of Ophiuchus, is a Clepas.
Oh, wow. And here we are, going from death to rebirth, from winter to spring with the equinox and the spring, the new moon, right? Lots of energy of sort of coming to a close to then, shed and be reborn into even stronger, whole.
Right, because that's what the equinox is. It's all about what? Rebirthing something.
Yeah.
That has died in the winter, that has, you've went through the process. And now you're wanting to spring forth and rebirth a new version of yourself. Plant the new seed, of Aries, which, Aries represents the seed and the power of breaking that shell open.
Yeah, and I love just, that being the first house and being a fire element. And it's just like you're getting that spark going on.
Right, that's exactly what
the initiation. So
Yes.
Once again, my friends.
Absolutely right.
Exactly.
So maybe to close up, let's talk a little bit about how can people maximize the energy of this important, transition and kind of a portal, right? To, what's the mindset to have? Maybe what are some examples of actions or rituals, or consciousness to have during that very specific time of the equinox?
There's a lot of different things that people can do. I mean, equinox rituals are a very, very powerful. When you're stepping into your ancestral energy, and being able to understand your lineage. Where did you come from? Where is your lineage connected into? Where is it? Where does that line run to? And so depending on where it runs to, you can work with, go ahead and dive into research, find out, and then you can really predicate your ritual or your study upon that energy. That's what the equinox is all about.
Yeah.
And then setting certain things in when you're doing that that are going to create that acting out of that mythos.
Right. And how can we, I know some people are very cautious about engaging in kind of ritual or ceremony because they don't want to feed some dark agenda or dark energy. Do you have any thoughts about that discernment? Is it best to sort of create your own rather than join into an existing thing? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, it just depends on relationship.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to put myself in a position where I don't know people and they want to some ritual stuff and I don't know what agendas they've got or engaging the energy or whatever. I would that, but I align myself with people that are that I know their intent. Within my goal, and where we're in communion and we're in agreement.
Yeah.
And so with that energy, then you can definitely level up, begin to work with people. which is kind of what we're going to do here. I've got some people coming, and and we're going to. That's kind of how we're going to engage. As far as these mass meditations and all that stuff like that. I don't necessarily in anything like that.
Yeah. And then also, let's say some stuff happens on a large scale politically, or big events happen. How do you advise people? What are your thoughts about how do we interact with those things?
Well, look, right now what's happening, because Jupiter Aries and all this Aries energy going on right now, the war drums are trying right now. You guys can feel this.
And Palestine is, back in the news these days, that kind of stuff.
Right, and and you're dealing with this Ukraine thing. Got
all of a sudden they care about that. Interesting,
and that just keeps dragging on and on and on and on. And we're as a country, we're having a proxy war, going on with Ukraine. That's usually, again, and so and China wanting to reclaim. You've got all these things going on, right? The war drums are trying to be right now. So as major responsibility to step up into a place where we're bringing, the opposite energy, to this. We're putting this into the that's our responsibility for us who know the difference. We can't just sit and let them do whatever the fuck they want. We got to take, like I said in my video, I'm tired of them bringing it to my front door. It's time to bring it their front. Fuck that. Empower ourselves to this position now. This is just, whatever will happen. We've got to take the initiative in context to who we are, why we're here, what we're here to do, and take this initiative and take it to the next step now.
Yes.
See? And by doing it, come together. See? And like we're doing now, and come together in ceremony and ritual, we bring into a place where we magnify the energy. It's magnified, it's amplified now, because we've come together in agreement. That which we bind on earth is bound in the ethers. That which we bind in the ethers is bound on earth.
Yes, with consciousness
on earth is released into the ethers. It's released into the ether, released upon the earth as above, so below, in as without.
With full consciousness and true
with full consciousness and intent and focus.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's going to be more magnetized. The more we focus and keep it rolling, and the more people that are on that level and frequency, it's going to be, more than just magical, I think.
Yeah, excellent way to bring it home here today. Thank you, Rodney. It's awesome.
It's been great for having me.
Yeah, no, thank you for your dedication to the work and being available today. And you have some real gifts to offer and wisdom, and love having you here. Thank you.
Check out our services. Your website again is Blue Pearl.
www.heartcoreproductions.com.
Sorry.
You can get a hold of me at heartcoreproductions9@gmail.com. I have a Facebook, Heartcore Productions, or you can get a hold of me at Rodney on Facebook on Messenger as well.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to getting a reading from you, Rodney. I'm really excited.
Yeah, you can hit me up. We'll definitely get into it.
All right, great. It's been wonderful.
Love everybody. On to my next.
On to your next gig.
Yeah, rocket. And this has been Dissolving the Divide with 3 Libra ascendings. It's been a pleasure.
Ascendants, crazy.
Yeah, so good. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you, everyone, for listening. This is Dissolving the Divide, episode 13.
Season's greetings.
Much love, everybody.
All right, bye.
Drekonianto Deshotundrigi Vaktondrog Hoshoktra Hamin